Secondary data analysis is when a researcher uses data that they have not themselves collected for the purpose of analysis and dissemination. Essentially, if you're doing secondary data analysis, you are not the one that collected the data, went out into the field and collected the data. Rather, you are using the data that has already been collected by another researcher, with permission, of course, and then you're analyzing that data. You might be publishing an article on that data, or you might be writing a paper for your course on that data. Whatever it may be, you're using data that has been collected by somebody else or another group for the purpose of your assignment. You may also repurpose data that's been collected already. That's also called secondary data analysis. So the GSS Data Explorer from the University of Chicago is one of the top secondary data analysis databases. So we'll just quickly explore that, the key trends within GSS Data Explorer specifically. So you could just Google GSS Data Explorer, or you could type it into your browser. And for today, I'll just click on key trends because I want to keep this video short and I want to keep it as user-friendly as possible. So let's assume within the key trends category, I may have different interests, which I do. And on a particular day, I'm just curious about something in particular. Let's say we've got gender and marriage, current affairs, civil liberties, politics, quality of working life, religion, and spirituality. Let's assume that just for today, I am curious about crime. All right. So within the category of civil liberties, I've got the subcategory of crime, and I'll click on that within the key trends section. And the first option that pops up is whether or not people favor or oppose the death penalty for murder. It seems a little harsh for me right now. I'm not feeling like I want to review anything that's that hard-hitting. So I'm going to click on this down arrow right here. And within that subcategory of crime, I find favor or oppose death penalty for murder, which is what we're on right now. Are local courts too harsh? Afraid to walk at night in the neighborhood? Should marijuana be made legal? Favor or oppose gun permits? It seems that actually marijuana legalization is a hot topic these days, and it's still a fairly light enough topic where, it's not too heavy hitting. So maybe I'm interested in that for today. So pause for a minute and let's just go through some terminology so this way you know what you're looking at here. Right, so first, this is the dependent variable that you've chosen. Should marijuana be made legal? We have different choices as to what the dependent variable could be. It would be legal, not legal, or don't know. So should marijuana be made legal? Legal, not legal, don't know. That's your dependent variable. Marijuana legalization is your dependent variable. Or I should say attitudes toward marijuana legalization is your dependent variable. You have several independent variables that you can go through, and here we have the breakdown. So here we just see the total, right? So over the course of time, attitudes toward marijuana legalization have increased. But let's say I want to break it down by particular independent variables, and we have age, subjective class identification, highest degree, condition of health, Hispanic specified, marital status, political affiliation, race, region of interview, sex, biological sex I should say, citizenship status, and labor force status as some of the independent variables that I have available to me. But before we start doing that, let's go backwards a little bit and talk about what the research question is here. And the research question here would be determined by, first by scrolling down and seeing what the question text is. Do you think the use of marijuana should be made legal or not? This is the actual question that was asked to the people surveyed, and this is how they've answered in total over here, right? Now, your research question is going to differ from this research question because your research question will include the independent variable in addition to the dependent variable of attitudes towards marijuana legalization. Let's assume that the first research question you have pertains to age. So we're going to click on breakdown. We're going to go to age. And actually, let's stay on total for a second there. So you're going to click on breakdown, and we see that age is an option there. So we already know that attitudes toward marijuana legalization is our dependent variable. And now I'm going to choose age as my independent variable. Therefore, the way that we would fill out the blanks of the research question would be, does blank independent variable correlate with blank dependent variable. So does age, which is my independent variable, correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization, which is my dependent variable? So does age correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization? And then my null hypothesis would be, again, just filling in the blanks. Age, independent variable, does not correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization, which is my dependent variable. So age does not correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization. That would be my null hypothesis. And let's say for my directional hypothesis, I've chosen to go with as age decreases, attitudes toward marijuana legalization increases. Essentially what I'm saying is that the younger the participant, the more likely they are to favor marijuana legalization. So I have to go into it having my research question, having my null hypothesis, and also having my directional hypothesis to see whether or not I'm right. And let's see if I am. Click on age. Okay. So here, just based on 2018, let's call this a cross-sectional study, a not longitudinal study. So we're not going from 1973 to 2018. Rather, we're just taking 2018, thereby making it a cross-sectional study. So for our cross-sectional secondary data analysis study, our research question is, does age correlate with attitudes towards marijuana legalization? Null hypothesis is age does not correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization. And my directional hypothesis, just because I wanted to, ask this question, or not ask this question, have this as my hypothesis, is as age decreases, attitudes toward marijuana legalization increases. So let's see if I'm right. 2018, 72% of those who are between the ages of 18 and 34 favor marijuana legalization. That's their attitude. 64% of those who are between the ages of 35 and 49 favor marijuana legalization. 57% of those who are between the ages of 50 and 64 favor marijuana legalization. And 46% of those who are above the age of 65 plus, favor marijuana legalization. So it appears as though that the younger you are, the more likely you are to favor marijuana legalization. We see that based on this chart. Now, if you're not comfortable working with charts, I tend to be very visual, so I enjoy charts. But if you're better with tables, all you have to do is click on table here, and you're able to see the same information expressed to you in table form. Personally, I like charts. If you like tables, that option is available to you. Since I like charts, we'll just stay in charts because I'm more comfortable working with charts. Most people tend often to be visual for the most part, so charts tend to be more user-friendly. So now I can say that my hypothesis is shown to be true. I have validated my hypothesis. And how have I validated my hypothesis? Based on this information, the younger you are, the more likely you are to favor marijuana legalization, just for 2018 alone. Now let's say I want to have a different independent variable. We'll do 3 examples, so this way we're a little thorough, as thorough as possible. Let's say I want to, what do I want to do? Okay, so let's do marital status. And I'm not going to click on marital status just yet. I'm just hovering over it for now. I know that it's there. Before I click on it, I want to create my research question, my null hypothesis, and my directional hypothesis. So in doing that, I'm going to start with the research question. And the research question here, just filling in the blanks, because the dependent variable will stay the same. It's always going to be attitudes toward marijuana legalization. My research question now is, does marital status correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization? Does independent variable correlate with dependent variable? Next, my null hypothesis would be my null hypothesis would be independent variable does not correlate with dependent variable. And let's fill in those blanks. The independent variable here is marital status, does not correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization, which is my dependent variable. And my directional hypothesis, For whatever reason, let's say I think those who are married are more in favor of marijuana legalization. So my directional hypothesis then would be being married increases attitudes toward marijuana legalization. Once more, being married increases attitudes toward marijuana legalization is my directional hypothesis. And let's see now if my directional hypothesis is indeed correct. Click on that. Okay. Now we see that in 2018, again, we're just doing a cross-sectional study, not longitudinal. Those who have never been married are 74% in favor of marijuana legalization. Those who've been separated are 65%. Those who've been divorced, 63%. Those who've been married, 55%. And those who've been widowed, 45%. That's in 2018, cross-sectional. Now, based on this data, I can now invalidate my hypothesis. I can invalidate my directional hypothesis. Why? Because we see that the people who are most likely to favor marijuana legalization are in fact people who've never been married, versus those who have been married. There's 19% difference there. So those who are married are actually 19% less likely to favor marijuana legalization than those who have never been married. So therefore, I can invalidate my directional hypothesis. The first directional hypothesis involving age, I was able to validate that. This, now I'm invalidating. We'll do one more independent variable, then we'll call it a video. We went into marital status already. Let's say I'm interested in biological sex. Okay, so again, before I click on biological sex, I want to create my research question, I want to create my null hypothesis, and I want to create my directional hypothesis. My research question then would be biological sex, does biological sex correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization? You notice that I'm just filling in the blanks here. Does blank independent variable correlate with blank dependent variable? Does biological sex correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization? Next, my null hypothesis. Again, I'm just filling in the blanks. Independent variable does not correlate with dependent variable. So, biological sex does not correlate with attitudes toward marijuana legalization. Now, with my directional hypothesis, what do I want to go with there? Let's say I, for whatever reason, believe that those who are female would be more likely to be in favor of marijuana legalization. So therefore, my directional hypothesis would be stated as follows. Being female increases attitudes toward marijuana legalization. Once more, being female increases attitudes toward marijuana legalization, and that is my directional hypothesis that I will either be validating or invalidating based on what we find as soon as I click on this. Okay, so we find that in 2018, and really for the duration since 1973, males have consistently been more in favor of marijuana legalization than females have, which I'm actually quite surprised by. I thought there would be more of a crossover, but hey, what do I know, right? So here we find that in 2018 cross-sectional, 65% of men and 59% of women, males and females, so I'm sorry, 65% of males and 59% of females are in favor of marijuana legalization. We know that 59 is a smaller number than 65, therefore I can now invalidate my hypothesis because it isn't true. In fact, being female actually decreases attitudes toward marijuana legalization. Being male increases attitudes toward marijuana legalization. Therefore, now I can invalidate my hypothesis based on the cross-sectional data for 2018. All right. Now, this is just one example. Now, you can go into key trends. You can do this with so many different things. That's why it's so... I'm a little bit of a dork, obviously, so like I enjoy data probably a lot more than most of the people watching this video might. But this is interesting, I think, to just go through, like, just different things that might be interesting to you at that particular time. Let's say for whatever reason on that particular morning you wake up and you're thinking about marriage. You click on that subcategory under gender and marriage, and let's say you're not necessarily interested in people should be living together before marriage, although that is a very interesting topic. Let's see what else is there under the subcategory of marriage, which falls under the category of gender and marriage. You've got several choices. Let's say happiness of marriage. Okay, sure. We just landed on that. We'll click on happiness of marriage. And now this is the total. We see the question text right here. This is the dependent variable, happiness of marriage. We've got the different choices for the dependent variable. We have very happy, pretty happy, not too happy. Some people don't know if they're happy. And then we have the independent variables that you can choose between age, subject of class identification, highest degree, condition of health, Hispanic specified, marital status, political affiliation, race, region of interview, biological sex, citizenship status, and labor force status. So these are your independent variables, and you can play around with them. Let's see how many people who answered pretty happy fall into the category of married. And these are, okay, so marital status, there's only married. It seems like there's, so happiness of marriage. This is the question as taking things all together. How would you describe your marriage? So obviously this is a constant, and the question gives it away because the only people that are being asked this question are married. That's why you don't see widowed. That's why you don't see never married. So this is a little bit of a, it's more of a constant here, but let's see it biological sex. So what we find here is, let's just do this one once. So, well, we already clicked on it, so you can see what's going on. So here, just really quickly, my research question might be, does biological sex correlate with happiness of marriage? And my null hypothesis then would be biological sex does not correlate with happiness of marriage. And finally, my directional hypothesis could be being male means that you're more happy. So being male increases happiness of marriage. And here we see historically that has not been the case. 2018, the difference is only 1%. So in 2018, 33% of females are pretty happy with their marriage. Let's go to very happy. Let's be positive, shall we? Okay, so, actually, all right, so males tend to be very happy, whereas females tend to answer very happy less frequently. So of those people who are very happy, fall in the very happy category, not the pretty happy category, which could be difficult because very happy and pretty happy, what's very to you might be pretty to me, and what's pretty to me might be very to you. So let's go with not too happy. I think that might actually, and although even there, it's more of a constant because it's so low. So most people who are married don't answer that they are not too happy. But it's just fun to play around with, I think. Again, I am a nerd in that sense, so it might be, it's fun to me, but might not be fun to you. But it's just available to you. It's completely free. You can access this at your convenience and just have fun with it. And if you have any assignments due pertaining to the GSS Data Explorer, particularly in regards to the key trends, now you have a basic understanding of how to navigate through the key trends and find answers to some of the questions that you've been looking for. All right, thank you. Appreciate your time.